Hey legends, we've got quite a massive buy, hold and sell this week. There's so much going on, there's so much chaos in the world of fantasy, and with that in mind, let's get into it. Okay, so the guy we've got first up, and somebody who is definitely on my radar this week, is Angus Crichton, available at Edge, 442k with a 27 break even and a 0.75 ppm, so currently owned by 7.83% of fantasy players. And he went and did the thing that we didn't want him to do, and that's score a massive 59 points in round 5. So he is a little bit more expensive than he was last week, but it does give us a fair degree of encouragement that he is going to really be a superstar over the next few weeks. I don't think he's likely to play Origin, but I also don't believe it's quite a slam dunk for Angus Crichton. So I've got some concerns about Nat Butcher and what that means for his minutes. I've got concerns about the Robbo rotation. And then, we've still got Satili Tupanua hanging around on the bench. And we've also got Wong, who could potentially come back into this team as well. So there's a few things to consider there. But at 442k for a base stat king capable of pumping out 59 or even more, I think you've really got to consider Angus Crichton this week. Let's keep moving. Okay, so next up we have Jaden Campbell, wing fullback, 481k. And on the weekend, he really reminded us of exactly what he can do when he pumped out that 60 points. He's only got a 20 break even, a 0.58 ppm, and my thoughts on Jaden Campbell are pretty simple. The Titans really, really need him because let's face it, other than him and Fafita, maybe AJ Brimson, who else have they really got? Now we also know that when we look at Jaden Campbell's history, when he gets to play 80 minutes, and as long as he's fullback at the Titans, he's going to play 80 minutes. He does average over 45, and that's exactly what we need from a Jaden Campbell. So he is also on my radar this week, and I reckon he could be a valuable asset to get in at less than 500k. Let's keep moving. Okay, the next player we've got is Kale Iro, and he doesn't come without a fairly high degree of risk, but he is available in centre, and we all know centre has been a bit of a tragedy or a train wreck for a lot of people this season. 268k with a -1 break even and a 0.6 ppm. He's currently owned by just over 25% of players, and that's likely to continue to skyrocket. He pumped out a massive 49 in round 4, but I certainly don't think he's going to get that every week. And like I say there, he does come with a fairly high degree of risk and is at risk of being dropped if the Sharkies continue to play with their lineup. You've still got Talakai sitting on the bench, so at any stage throughout that game, they could punt Iro and put Talakai straight back into that role. So a couple of things to consider there, but being honest, he is definitely on my radar as well, especially at that price point, especially as well with his New South Wales Cup pedigree. I think he has the potential to do really well. Let's keep moving. Okay, so the next guy I've been asked a lot about is Jai Gray. So available at half, but obviously likely to line up as fullback, 230k, 16 break even, and obviously no data from a PPM point of view in the NRL. Already at 3.9% ownership. My thoughts and concerns around Jai Gray is the question mark on longevity. Now, if he comes out and absolutely smashes it, there is some talk that they could move Latrell Mitchell to the centres. To be honest, I don't know if that's something the Rabbitohs would have the balls to actually go and do. So it's a big question mark for me. I still have a feeling after 3 weeks, Latrell comes back in and he's playing fullback. So I reckon Jai Gray, even if he does a pretty good job, will still only get the 3 games. The other question mark that we have here is the round 7 bye. So, you only get him this week. He's out next week, so you have to find coverage. And who knows what Jason Demetrio does with that whole Bunnies lineup in the meantime. So again, great price, 230k, but does come with a fairly high degree of risk. Let's keep moving. Chevy Stewart, very similar to Jai Gray in the fact that he's only 230k, 16 break even, doesn't yet have a recorded PPM. already owned by 12% of players, but again, high risk, high reward, and may keep his position for up to 6 weeks. And there's probably a lot of, little asterisks, terms and conditions associated with that, mostly because the Raiders really have depth this year and they can cover a lot of these positions. So again, if you're going to go with a Chevy Stewart, do it with a fairly high degree of caution because you may only get him for 1 or 2 weeks. So that's a little bit of a watch out. Having said that though, if Chevy Stewart comes out and absolutely nails it, it's going to be very hard for Ricky Stewart just to punt him back to reserve grade. But you never know. Look, this is Chevy Stewart's time to shine, that's for sure. Let's keep moving. Okay, next up, we've got a big bopper, Stefano Utuikamano, available for us in mid 680k with a 22 break even. But what I really like here is the 0.94 ppm, especially for a player that's currently playing at 60 minutes, which is just amazing. He's a little bit of a pod at 1.98% ownership, and he has scores of 38, 59, 53, and a very impressive 77 in round 5. So, as I said there, he is a 60-minute player, solid work rate, and low errors, which is exactly what you want from a forward. Just somebody who's prepared to get in and get the job done. And Stefano hits that criteria to a T, and from my point of view, would be a great asset in your team. Let's keep moving. Okay, so I've put Shawn Blair in here with a little bit of apprehension. So he is available at edge, 526k, 34 break even and a 0.7 ppm, owned by less than 2% of players, and currently has a 35 and a 45. Now, my apprehension here is that he's never really been an 80-minute player. Joe Chan is sitting in 18th man. And those scores, 35 and 45 aren't amazing. But having said all that, he is playing in a Melbourne Storm team. And we all know that if you're playing for Melbourne Storm, there's a high expectation of success, work rate, discipline. So my big question mark here is, can Shawn Blair actually improve on that 45? Will he start to play 80 minutes? And where does a Joe Chan likely fit in the future? So there's a couple of question marks on Shawn Blair. I won't talk you away from it. I think he's a decent option, but what does his longevity look like? I really don't know. Let's keep moving. Alrighty, so next up we've got Shawn Johnson. Now, available at half, obviously, 814k, 41 break even and a 0.67 ppm, owned by almost 20% of fantasy players, and has some really decent scores, 60, 26, 59, 59, and the big one last week, 87. My thoughts on Shawn Johnson are origin cover. He's a solid 60s player and has a fairly high degree of upside when the wires are on. I think if we were rating halves at this point in time, you'd definitely have Cleary, Hines, and then maybe Johnson. So I think from an origin point of view, he definitely fits that bill. So he could be a good option. There is a degree here of chasing last week's points. So if you're going to buy him, don't expect 87 week in and week out. He'll settle somewhere around that 60 mark. Let's keep moving. Okay, we spoke about Kalyn Ponga last week as a buy. He continues to be a buy this week. 738k, 33 break even and a 0.66 ppm. Owned by nearly 26% of fantasy players. And he's coming off 2 really decent scores of 72 and 67. My thoughts with Kalyn Ponga, and I guess a lot of fullbacks at the moment, is that they are up and down. So, you're going to get great weeks and then you're going to get some really low weeks. Sometimes you just have to roll with the punches. Now, that 67 he got last week did have a try. And if you back that out, then all of a sudden, Kalyn Ponga's down to mid-50s, which is still a decent score. But I guess the point I'm trying to make here is for Kalyn Ponga to be doing really well, the Newcastle Knights need to be scoring points. Whether that's Kalyn Ponga scoring tries or kicking goals, the Newcastle Knights need to have that momentum. So you're going to have some big upside, you're going to have a little bit of downside, but I reckon when it comes to wing fullback, you could do a lot worse than Kalyn Ponga, that's for sure. Let's keep moving. Okay, on to the holds, and look, these guys were just about to get knifed in the back last week, but Jamon Salmon is on the hold list again this week. Available at edge and mid, 378k. He continues to make us a little bit of money, 21 break even, which he should beat quite comfortably this weekend, a 0.48 ppm, and owned by just under 40% of fantasy players. So he's currently got a 29, 31, 37, 21, and 34. So you could almost pencil him in to somewhere around the 30 mark this week. Maybe, if he's lucky, up to around about a 35. So he will continue to make us a little bit of money. We'd love a 40 out of him. That would be amazing. The big question for us is, will he keep getting punted to center? Because whenever that happens, his score dips. So if he can come on and play lock and stay in that lock position for a full 80 minutes, then look, he's likely to get a 40 plus score. So fingers crossed that continues to happen. He's a little bit of a slow burn. He's not making huge amounts of money, but he is still making positive momentum. Let's keep moving. Okay, so next up we have Sam Hughes, very similar to Jamon Salmon, available for us in the mid 302k with a 10 break even, which is great. He now continues to really start to accelerate that money making. A 0.98 ppm, which we love, and owned by just less than 40% of fantasy players. Now, after that 8 from round 4, we were ready to put him on the chopping block for sure, but he came out last week and pumped out a 47, which we know he's capable of doing, but he's back on the bench again this week. I do wonder what that means for his minutes and why exactly isn't he getting more time on the park. That's my biggest concern with Sam Hughes. We know with that PPM he is capable of pumping out a massive score. He just needs the minutes on the park. So the big question is, will he get it? And if he does get it, what sort of score will he produce? And I think with that 10 break even, he will have a slight stay of execution until he at least starts to slow down in terms of money making. But it's got to be close, that's for sure. Okay, so next up, a guy we had on the buy list last week, and that's Clint Guth. So 568k with now a 50 break even and a 0.53 ppm. I think there's a few owners panicking after that 20 last week, but I reckon he'll bounce back, and he'll bounce back pretty quickly. Round 5, from my point of view, was a bit of an anomaly. It was a horror weekend last weekend, and I think going into this weekend, he will be a significantly better player. I think they're playing at home this week as well. I think that'll make all the difference, and I reckon you could probably pencil in a 50-plus score from Clint Guth. Let's keep moving. Terrell May, big Terrell May. He's another player like Clint Guth who just had one of those anomaly weeks, pumping out only 23. He's got a 54 break even. He's capable of smashing that, but with a 1.04 ppm, he's a player that just needs minutes on the park to be absolutely successful. And surely Robbo doesn't pump out another low minutes week for Terrell May. You know, there's a bunch of rumours obviously hanging around that he missed the team bus. I don't know how true that is or not. It seems pretty petty that you would sacrifice the potential of winning a game over something so small, but I'm not a rugby league coach, obviously. But Terrell May, in my opinion, will absolutely bounce back. Let's keep moving. Cory Paterson, Fini Fuiaki, so available on the edge, 377k, 19 break even, and a 0.62 ppm. He's on the hold list, mostly because his scores have been mostly underwhelming, and the rate at which he is making money is incredibly slow and incredibly frustrating. Watching games, it just appears that the attack is always just passing the ball in front of him as opposed to passing it directly to him. So from my point of view, he needs to get a bit hungrier. He needs to go chasing the ball and wanting to get more involved in attack in particular. Now, he does have scores of 19, 38, 40, 26, and 29. So we do like the 38 and the 40, and that's exactly where we want to see him. So these mid-20s scores are not what we are after. And if he doesn't shape up in the next week or two, then we are definitely looking to move on from Fini Fuiaki. But for now, he's a hold, he's making money, and fingers crossed he continues to do it. Let's keep moving. James Tedesco, so wing fullback, 688k with an 83 break even, a 0.7 ppm, and owned by less than 10% of fantasy players. So my thoughts here are it's Teddy, right? So in my opinion, he will absolutely bounce back. He's a superstar of the game, and even in the first few rounds, pumping out a 53, a 65, a 71, and yes, a couple of lower ones, a 32 and a 5. Really unlucky getting knocked out last week. If he's out for just this week, then you can probably hold. If it's going to be a longer term issue, then you might look to sell. But I reckon if you can hold on to him, he's going to be a superstar. He is a superstar. He definitely has the capacity to push up into that mid-60s, mid-70s kind of range from a scoring point of view. And I think when he's back leading into the Origin, he will be absolutely magnificent. but I can understand why people are looking to move on. Okay, we're now onto the sells, and unfortunately, Big Red here, Corey Horsburgh, is out for up to 8 weeks with what we understand to be a groin injury, so not good news for Corey. He was just coming back into the game. Now, the thing that this highlights as well is who's the next man up for State of Origin, because it's unlikely that Corey's going to get the gig, and you'd have to suggest that it would be a Jermaine Hopgood. So if you own Jermaine, just keep that in the back of your mind because he is likely to get a start in this year's State of Origin. All right, let's keep moving. Burbo Ben Trebojevic is 362k with a 26 break even, so he does continue to make us a little bit of money. But unfortunately, he is losing his grip on that edge roll and is now being pushed into the centers. And when he's in the centers, we know he averages 22.3. So from my point of view, I'm looking to move on from Burbo this week. There is a little bit of an argument to hold. He will continue to make money. He'll obviously play near on 80 minutes. You never know. He could get a try assist. He could sneak over for a try, but he's up against it this week. And from my point of view, now is a good time to move on from Burbo. Let's keep moving. Satili Tupanua has unfortunately been benched this week, so he is on the bench and probably won't get significant minutes. Now, last week he did play 80 minutes and only managed to pump out 13, which is not great at all. He's had scores so far this year of 22, 31, 33, 32, and that really disappointing 13. My concern for him is now he has a bench role. That is just likely to continue to go down, which is a bit of a concern. He has a 37 break even, hasn't beaten that score once this year, so he is likely to really lose money this week. And with that in mind, I think you just have to move on from Satili Tupanua. Let's keep moving. Joey Chan, he's an interesting one. There still is a bit of an argument to hold if you've held this long. He's currently 18th man, and I think that's going to keep Shawn Blair honest and working really hard to retain his spot. But, you know, he's 295k, only has scores of 26 and 35. I think there's just better options out there, and we can't wait forever on a Joey Chan. So in my opinion, he's a sell, and I think you should look to move on from Joe Chan. But you never know. Look, he could be back next week. Let's keep moving. Okay, so next up is Zack Larder up at the Cowboys, available in center, 493k with a 52 break even. Look, the story here is he is likely to be out for the season. Picked up an absolutely horrible injury and will be requiring surgery. So if you've got Zack Larder, and not a lot of you do, but look to move on definitely this week. Let's keep moving. Blaze Talungi, centre, 324k with a 14 break even, a 0.4 ppm, but unfortunately he's been dropped thanks to what can only be described as a shocking Parramatta performance in round 5. I actually think it's a bit unfair that he has been punted. I think he should have been moved back into the centres. But Brad Arthur's doing Brad Arthur things. And you know, that's NRL footy. The Parramatta Eels just need to get back on track and start winning games. But unfortunately for Blaze, he has been dropped out of the 17. Which also means that unfortunately for us, we've probably all burned a trade. Now, there is an argument for you to hold on to him. Just wait another week or two. But from my point of view, he's another sellout target this week. Let's keep moving. Drew Hutcherson, available in the halves, 463k with a 27 break even. He'll continue to make a little bit of money, but it's not a lot. He's been one of the slowest burns from arguably the slowest halfback in the league. A 0.5 ppm and owned by less than 8% of fantasy players. A 34, a 29, a 37, a 45 and a 31. So you can say he's fairly confidently a mid-30s kind of player. As I've got there, you can hold for one more week or you can look to do a little bit of an upgrade or a sideways switch. If I don't move Drew on this week, I'll be looking to move him on next week for sure. But Drew Hutcherson for mine definitely deserves to be on the sell list either this week or next. So let's keep moving. Jordan Rapana, absolutely heroic efforts in round 5 to come back out on the field, but it now looks like he's out for up to 6 weeks, and that's what gives Chevy Stewart his opportunity. 547k is a lot of money to hold on your bench, not producing anything for the next 6 weeks. This is a bit of a sad one as well. He was traveling pretty well, but unfortunately, I think you have to look to move on. All right, let's keep moving. Damien Cook, he's our last of the sells today in what I think is an unfortunate and very dumb decision to move on Cookie. 769k means we just can't hold on to him. 46 break even, I thought he was doing some pretty decent things, 60, 31, 46, 84, and 55. Pretty decent, I reckon. But with Jason Demetriou's job on the line, he had to make some changes, and unfortunately, Cookie was one of those sacrifices that he had to make. I think it's a really disappointing decision. I think it's the wrong one, but unfortunately for fantasy, we just have to move on. So there you go, guys. Look, that is buy, hold, and sell for this week. As you can see here on screen, a whole bunch of changes, a whole bunch of carnage. It just continues to absolutely whack us around the head at the moment. So I hope that all of you are navigating your way around some of these ins and outs and buy and holds and sells and all that sort of stuff and achieving some really good results. Onwards and upwards from here. Let's hope that this weekend helps us all produce some massive fantasy scores. Now, anyway, if you've liked today's video, you know what to do. Smash that like button for me. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And as always, guys, get involved in the conversation via the comment section down below. And I'll see you all in the next video.